Now let's move on to the Nigerian financial services sector, which I said will need a master plan that is closer to the FSS 2020 program that was inaugurated some 20 years ago, but not so well managed and followed through. That was according to Bola Onadeke, Koko, who is the group CEO of the FMDQ group, while speaking to me a few days ago. And this is the concluding part of my interview chat with the CEO that's focused on Nigeria's currency market, interest rates, debt, inflation, and the wider economy.
It's been close to 20 years or more when we talk about the financial system, the FSS 2020, I'm sure, back then. Do you think we can revisit that? Do you think there's something we can learn on how to provide a better architecture for the Nigerian financial system over the next 5-10 years and more?
Thank you, Bosa. That's a good question. And I like the point your reference to Vision 2020.
The FSS 2020.
So remember where we started. It's good to have vision. But what happened? The pillars of FSS 2020 are three. The first one, strengthen your domestic markets. Are we there? That was vision for 2020. We're not there. The second pillar was, once you strengthen your domestic financial markets, you then have linkage with external markets. And the third, build an international financial center. So this is the point. You can have vision, but if you don't do the right things, the architecture, the structure, the monitoring, the reporting, and going back to look at it, you won't get there. So it's good as a soundbite. I want to have a 1 trillion, economy. But are we going to do all the right things? You can't want to strengthen your domestic markets and move from a liberalized FX market to a controlled one where central bank becomes the only seller. It's not possible in this market anymore. So in terms of that financial sector, the financial system, the restructuring and transformations, there's a lot of work to do in that space. And for me, you look at the capital market itself. The capital market needs massive development. That space has not developed in years. In actual fact, from 2019 to date, probably we've had one IPO in the country. As at May, when I checked, the US had 850 IPOs. So you start looking at the equity market. You look at the debt markets not growing. You look at the commodities market not growing. There's something to do about markets, something that will transform the way Nigerian markets, because to fire the economic revolution, you need markets, and those markets need to be strong. You want to do student loans. Those student loans have to be packaged into securities at some point to be sold to the market. So first is, the primary lenders will do the work, but at some point they need the short-term players. So if a student loan is not for 1 year, the bank's money is for 1 year. So the banks should keep booking them, but once they season them, they sell it to people that are willing to hold them for 20 years. It's the same thing we did with NMRC. Then you go back. But today, there is no creation of new mortgages for NMRC to buy for 20 years.
So it's a little bit stagnant.
Things are stagnant at the primary level. The money market, the FX market, the equity market, that space needs a lot of work. The infrastructure for the economy, we've talked about that. So we've talked on some of these things. I see in the next 10 years, we're going to spend 2-3 years rebuilding, but we need to rebuild with, the crisis. At times you must make use of the crisis. This is a period for us to really think of the market structure we want in the next 10 years. But the first 2 years, we're going to be cleaning things up. There's a lot of housekeeping that would have to go on the next 2 years. On the next 10 years, I hope we have an equity market that will be a pride of Nigerians, where IPOs go on in Nigeria, where Nigerians are connected with offshore markets. I'm hoping we have a money market that will allow transmission of monetary policy. Today, there's no connection between policy rate. And we can see that the central bank has relaxed talking about MPR. We have not had any monetary policy committee meetings. Nobody knows what is coming. But for financial markets, communication is highly, highly important. At some point, the communication can be structured, but you have to address markets and share vision with the markets, and everyone will be working. It's like an orchestra. Financial markets is very interesting, but someone has to lead the vision and say, this is where we're going. I hope that vision for the markets will be in place very soon. But you want a money market where it's easy to tap, people can access easily, it's easy to book loans. You should just try and, read through the process to buy a house in the United States or United Kingdom. We have to get prosperity. Prosperity must be, for Nigerians, must be our objective. And then you work back. How do we provide prosperity to these people? What are the things they need?
I think that will be my parting shot, because I want to be sharing that prosperity. Yeah. But first, what's your take if we're going to securitize? The National Assembly give approval for the securitization of about 7.7 billion naira of ways and means. That's going to come to the marketplace.
Ideally, the law does not permit the central bank to underwrite, because the overdraft is with central bank. So the central bank cannot be an investor. So the 22.7 that was done last year, they need to look at that. Because if you go to the CBN Act, it allows ways and means, but it says where there's securitization of the ways and means, do not underwrite that paper, any of the papers. So ideally, they have to be sold to the market.
Yes.
That is the way to securitize.
So the Minister of Finance and the DMO will have to lead that.
They have to lead that, and I think some work was done towards the end of the year on that.
Of last year.
And now, central bank can be a secondary buyer of the paper, so we have to understand it. But the primary securitization, central bank cannot be involved. Now, if banks buy the paper, and they want to repo with central bank or sell to central bank, that is a different issue. That is now a secondary market. So the securitization is good, and I think cleaning up the ways and means to return fiscal responsibility at the highest level is highly important. Then, that paper comes to the market, and anyone can be an investor in that paper. It will help, move capital and liquidity, because the first buyer may want to sell, so that market should be created. Once the fiscal discipline is in place at the national level, then we think of the states. Are we still happy with this configuration? When you run an entity, or you run Nigeria, or any geographical structure, you can change things if the purpose is for future and it will benefit everybody. Are we still happy with 36 states? Or we need to streamline things because of the cost of governance? How many commissioners? How many personnel? There's just a lot for a country that is not as buoyant. Maybe Nigerians need to know that Nigeria is not as buoyant as it used to be, but its potential is a potential, financial power in the world if the right things are done. Economic power. We find a way to make them not just cost centers, but revenue centers. Yeah, investment windows. Yes.
Because every corner of the 36 states that makes, including the FCT, has got one opportunity, one whatever resource that is fit for purpose.
You're right. Does the law permit them to exploit this?
That's a conversation.
That's a conversation. If those things are all in the exclusive list, why is mining with the federal government? If you have gold in Zamfara, let Zamfara State be able to work with the businessmen on the best way to get this thing to mine, and the states and the people. We may need to look at some restructuring that will work for the next 50, 40 years of Nigeria. But the way things are going on today, we need this leader, the president, to get everyone aligned to say, we've got to change things. When we're under military, it may be easier to cut from 6 regions, from 4 to 12 states, 36 states. It's the same way that we have to appreciate that things are not as rosy as they were, and to take very hard decisions. We all run institutions. When things are challenging, revenue are challenging, you have to get your spear of scissors to do the right thing to expenses.
We haven't talked about FMDQ so far in this conversation. And I'm sure you'll be wondering, why haven't I asked that question?
Well, we're dealing with national issues. FMDQ is just, one of the players in the market.
You are the powerhouse. It's the new year. So what's on the horizon? What's your playbook for FMDQ as a very critical enabler in Nigeria's entire financial system, fixed income, derivatives, interest rates, whatever you have in the portfolio, including the FX market? What are you up to and your team in the new year?
Yeah, but as I said, FMDQ is a financial market infrastructure. In 10 years, we focused on building one infrastructure or the other. We moved to an exchange. We built a clearinghouse, a central counterparty, which we're waiting for the Nigerian markets to use. We've built everything to world-class standards. We've put default resolution reserve in place. But if you don't have, viable spot markets, you cannot have derivatives market. And this has been built to de-risk the financial markets for the Nigerian economy. We're waiting for that to happen. We've built a new depository with world-class technology. We keep doing what we need to do to support the economy. But our strategic role goes beyond organizing the market, whether it's post-trade or pre-trade itself. As you mentioned, we also offer to advise the regulators and government, and we hope some of those are useful. We think of the big problems in Nigeria and we want them solved, because if the big economy itself is not solved, our businesses will not grow. 10 years ago, when we had the vision of where FMDQ will be and the markets will be, the numbers were bigger than what we've seen, but then we don't control the markets, right? we can have that vision and try to work with people. If we start playing with philosophy today, liberalized market, controlled market, it's not going to help anybody. So yes, we engage, a lot of advocacy and engagement. We also take the financial market diplomacy very seriously. When we play a role as the financial markets diplomat, we take Nigeria outside, talk to economic agents outside about Nigeria and what is going on. Whether it's great or not, we have to do that job. The truth is, when it's rosy, they don't need to talk to us. But when things are challenging, we go out there to talk to them.
You get more phone calls.
Yeah, we are these days. There's Zoom calls, and people want to really understand why Nigeria, a great nation, is just scoring own goals all the time. People wonder. People want to do business with Nigeria. You can't ignore this potential economic power. It's left to Nigeria to do what is right, and that doing what is right includes, do we want prosperity for Nigerians? You go to other countries and you hear this was what Dubai was like 50 years ago, and you see what's happened. Singapore was independence in 1965, given some, land to just go and do whatever they want. Nobody thought anything will come out of it. That is Singapore of today. No, natural resource, biggest exporter of this, biggest refinery, biggest business, number 3 in FX market in the world. How did that happen? So it starts with leadership. It starts with staying with your philosophy. It starts with attracting capital. Everything is attracted to Singapore. But the people, there's no homeless in Singapore. So is there someone with that sort of dream for Nigeria? And if that person exists, let the person come, get people together, build the economic plan, and we'll be strict with it. We're not going to build, an economic power with so many things that happen here, lawlessness, indiscipline by people that actually should be, enforcing laws and stuff. There's just a lot to do, but we can't keep ignoring them. Someone has to be bold enough to say, I'm going to lead this. And again, there must be a space for zero corruption. You get involved with corruption, you deal with that. I don't want to talk about the other side of Singapore and how the man dealt with things that they all agreed should not happen. They dealt with it very quickly, and people ask, where is Koko? They say, well, he got involved with this, is no more. So that was how, if you have a vision of what to build. I tell people Singapore is heaven on earth. You can go there. There was a time I spent 3 weeks. The only time someone pressed the horn of a car once in 3 weeks. There was no litter on the road. It wasn't like that when they got the land to start Singapore. You go to Singapore, a country, a very small country, and you see the port, and you see ships coming in and out, 24 hours to clear your goods. So when you say, what do we need to do? Try and import things to Nigerian ports and see what goes on. But a leader who has purpose and is determined to change this country would have to deal with all those things. And they have to be dealt with decisively. And people that compromise anything, anything that will compromise the achievement of that vision would have to be dealt with.
Decisive action.
Yeah, and in 10, 20 years, people see a country and will not believe this was Nigeria of old. But we just have to change in so many ways.